Alright everyone, we start off today with the SCOTUS decision the other day. I didn't do a live stream for this, even though it is technically a major, but I probably will live stream today because we're expecting more opinions, and the general consensus is, this is probably the last day they'll do it, so we'll probably get the EPA decision. That one will be big. Watch the court all of a sudden go to the left on politics and say, no, the EPA can do whatever it wants. I don't expect that. I expect a narrow ruling against the EPA, but it would be funny if that were to happen. Imagine what a way to end this particular docket season with all of these decisions. We got Bruin, so we got the upholding of the Second Amendment. We got Roe v. Wade, which effectively puts abortion back into the state's hands. Since the 1970s, it's of course been protected explicitly by the Supreme Court's prior decision. Now we have this decision. This involves Joe Kennedy, who was a teacher, technically a football coach, praying on the 50-yard line after games. And lower courts, by the way, ruled against him. SCOTUS ruled against the lower courts. Two of them ruled against Joe Kennedy. In this case, he was leading students in prayer, giving thanks during these sports games. And it was pointed out by the school district, whoa, you're violating the First Amendment. You can't do this. You're not allowed to have, overt religious displays in the context of schooling. It's illegal. It violates the First Amendment. And much like with several other decisions that we've seen, it really depends on how you interpret the First Amendment and which component of the First Amendment you give more weight to. On the one hand, Congress cannot make a law establishing a religion. Now, specifically, that explicitly refers to establishing a state religion, like making a law saying only Unitarian Christianity is the official religion of the United States, only Catholic Christianity, only Islam or something. In the more implicit sense, in the more broad sense, it's been typically interpreted for the better part of now 100 years. It also means that in any government context, so judges, you still swear on a Bible for some reason, people that are public officials, the police commissioner, people who are in a position where there may be involuntary contact with that person. It's coerced contact. Schools would be an example. Public school, the student who's enrolled there can't simply say, well, I'm not going to school today because I just don't fucking feel like it. They can play sick or something like that, but in general, it's mandatory attendance up until a certain age. That you cannot have the teachers, etc., leading people in prayer, telling people to worship Jesus, telling people to worship before the altar of Moloch Baal or something. You can't do that. It violates the First Amendment. The other component is that you cannot abridge the free exercise thereof of religion. So public officials also can't force you, and in the general context, like they can't tell you, take that fucking cross off or something like that. My feeling for years and years has been this. In the general sense, it's unacceptable to have overt religious displays by teachers, principals, etc. I don't care if students pray. I don't care if they organize religious clubs in schools, including in taxpayer-funded schools. None of that matters. They're not the officials. They may be on a government property at the time, but they're just doing their individual civic thing. Who gives a shit? They want to pray. You think that half those students don't silently pray before the test? Of course they do, because they didn't study in many cases. Even the atheistic kid is bowing his head and saying, please, ghost of Sigmund Freud, help me out a little bit here. It happens and nobody cares. And I look to a few things, a few experiences that I had actually that sort of inform me on this from my time in high school. I can't remember his name, but there was one specific guidance counselor in the school who held prayer meetings, actually, before school hours. On school property, he is a school official, but he's off the clock and he's not operating in an official capacity at the time. And every morning, about a half an hour before classes started, before the TA period, he would be out there by the flagpole in front of my high school, Mill River, by the way, really great school. If you're in the area, enroll your kid there. It's better than the alternatives, by the way. Pretty great, actually. I had a great time for the most part. A couple teachers I didn't get along with. Thankfully, I don't think any of them work there anymore, and a couple of the teachers that I liked are still there. Mr. Latkin. Hi, Mr. Latkin. There's a possibility that you've seen my videos. Good man. Really great with the U.S. AP component, U.S. history. Anyway, he would lead this prayer meeting before school. Nobody cared. At the time, I was like, straddling the line. I was in that transformative stage where I was transitioning, if you will, from being more on the Christian side to being quite secular, to being atheistic and saying like, well, I don't know about this horse shit. Even though I still professed Christianity at the time, I was having doubts. I was beginning to study things that showed me that maybe I didn't actually believe in many tenets of organized religion, certainly, if not spirituality. Did go through an atheistic phase, left that behind around the time I matured even further. But nobody cared. But it's on school property. It's on government property, yes, but of course it's strictly voluntary association. Nobody's being punished for not attending the prayer meeting. Nobody's being rewarded for attending it. There was another example. One of my high school science teachers, AP Biology in senior year, Mrs. Rayford. I think she's dead now, so I can use her name. By the way, rest in peace. One of the greatest teachers I ever had. We would go to her house, and this was, again, it's strictly voluntary. We were invited to come to her house in order to cram study for the AP test. By the way, I would not have gotten a 5 on the fucking test if we hadn't done this. So, again, posthumous thanks to Mrs. Rayford. Again, probably my favorite teacher ever. Mr. Stayhauer, who is dead, from Woodstock, is probably a close second. They're in competition. Both science teachers, by the way. Interesting. And she had religious iconography throughout her house. Now, keep in mind, she's a very pro-evolution, very, very liberal individual, by the way, politically, teacher of biology. She had Catholic shit everywhere. And by the way, she did talk about religion in her private time off of school grounds. We even talked about it in class, and it was very informal. Again, we were just having conversations. We're seniors. We're mature enough to hold a religious debate. As long as the teacher's not shit-canning you because you said, I don't believe in Jesus, nobody cared. By the way, she made the best garlic bread, I think, in the world. She's part Italian, and she would cook massive-ass pans of, like, spaghetti and lasagna for us during these sessions, and huge amounts of garlic bread. And I'm thinking if I ever learn how to make garlic bread as good as Mrs. Rayford did, because I make a competent garlic bread, so does my mom, so does Liz, so does my dad, many people. If I ever learn how to make it like she did, and I wish I had gotten the recipe, I have a feeling that people would be making an excuse to come over. It's like, somebody rings you up on the phone, hey, Liz and Sticks, please, I want to come over to your house. I just wanted to discuss geometry for a couple of hours. Isn't that fascinating? Oh, by the way, are you going to make more of that bread? It probably would literally be that way. I think she might have been drugging us. She might have put a CBD or something in that shit because it was like eating crack. I was sad because I can only have 2 or 3 pieces because people were scarfing it down so fast it was difficult to even get seconds. Anyway, other than my slight weight gain going to Mrs. Rayford's house, she wasn't praying, but there was religious shit everywhere. Lots of crosses. She really liked, it seemed to be that she liked to collect little angel statuettes and stuff. Her entire living room was full of them. They ran down the hall. They were in the fucking side room. They were probably upstairs in her living area. It was everywhere. Nobody cared. It doesn't violate the First Amendment. We weren't being forced to go there, and it wasn't on school grounds. In this particular case, here's my reading. While I'm uncomfortable with the basic concept of school time prayer in general, think about the context in this specific case, and there is no limiting language pointing this out. I wish SCOTUS had involved that because it would clear up some potential future legal cases that I know will emerge from this. And if they're going to go very, very pro-First Amendment in the religious sense, this particular incarnation of the Supreme Court, there will be future decisions decided on the side of people who want to pray and do religious stuff and so forth. This is a coach. This is a football team. This is not a curricular activity. It's not taking place in the school building, albeit it is on school grounds and technically speaking on funded school time. There is no coercion in this case. Joe Kennedy never said to the students, hey, I'm going to kick you off the team if you don't pray to Jesus because we really need to win this one. That never happened. Fundamentally, think about what happens when you join a sports team. Are you penalized for saying, you know what, I'm not going to try out for the soccer team this year for my school. I'm not going to play hockey or go to do Greek wrestling. No, it's extracurricular. It's totally voluntary. Some of it takes place on school time or with school funding or on school property, or all three in some cases. But it's a voluntary association. Nobody's forced to join the sports team. Thinking back to my time as even more acerbically secular, if I had joined a club or something and it opened with a prayer, would I have given a shit? No. Why would I care? I can just sit there and not pray, or I can pretend to pray, or I can say, oh, yeah, well, okay, Jesus or something. It doesn't impugn upon me in any way. My ability to not exercise religion, again, in that context, is totally voluntary, and I'm voluntarily signing up for something in which I'm not penalized in any academic sense, which is the core purpose of a school, for participating or not participating. So I mostly support the decision, although I would have liked limiting language to point out some of that particular logical gist. It's not the same as a teacher in a classroom you're forced to attend, otherwise you're penalized. You don't attend enough days in a row, you get suspended, you lose your credit or something. That would be very problematic, in my opinion, regardless of the form of prayer. It'd be the same as if a secular teacher were in there and said, hey, Jimmy, you're not allowed to pray before the test. Well, you're abridging their right to free exercise of religion while taking government taxpayer-funded money. I would be uncomfortable with that too. I wish there had been more limiting language, though, to point out there's a difference between the voluntary association of a sports team, a chess club, something that's done before or after school hours simply on school property. That's a different standard than in-class, curricular, you're punished for non-attendance, which could include that particular component, or non-component, again, in the you may not pray before the test sense. I just wish they had done that. But so now he can go back, coach more football, and pray on the 50-yard line. I fail to see how anyone is particularly hurt or injuncted in the exercise of their religious rights by this. Again, I'm very, very skeptical of organized religion's role in the world. I realize that some spiritual systems have been a net negative for humanity. It's a fucking football game. I don't know. Aren't there bigger things that we can think about? Can the liberals just go one day without doing a shoot-yourself-in-the-foot case before a court that they know is ostensibly leaning conservative at this time? Not with Roberts, he's a liberal, but you've got 5 justices that are generally conservative. All of them are under 80, and if you look at the actuary tables, you're looking at this composition of the court, I hate to tell you liberal people out there, for at least the next half-decade. Probably the next decade. Of course, the next president is likely to be Donald Trump again. Clarence Thomas could stand down and say, I'm comfy with Trump replacing me, if only to troll Joe Biden one last miserable fucking time before he keels over. That's about all. Peace out.